Welcome back to the Fire Break. I'm Steve Wolf. As you know, the Fire Break is sponsored by Team Wildfire, developing innovative technologies for putting out wildfires with jet engines and AI. Check us out on the web at teamwildfire.com. I've got a guest who is no stranger to disasters today. We'll be speaking with Everet Bopp, and Everet is with Disaster Tech Lab,
Yep.
among other things, right? And he's been working pretty much full time in the disaster space for the last 14 years. He's coming to us from the Netherlands today. That's pretty
Fine.
far away, isn't it, Everett? How are you?
Well, yes and no. I mean, the world is a small place, and thank you, Steve, for having me on. So I'm delighted to have a bit of a chat with you about some of the stuff that we're doing. But yeah, the Netherlands, it's like you said, we're talking here, we're opposite sides of the globe, so it's not that far really in one sense. And yeah, if you would have to walk the distance and you have to swim the distance, it would be very far.
Right.
Yeah.
As the comedian Stephen Wright said, it's a small world, but I wouldn't want to have to paint it.
Yes, he's correct there, very much.
Yeah. So tell me,
Yeah.
what got you into disaster tech, and what are you working on?
Well, it's interesting. Like going back to about 2010, when there was a major earthquake in Haiti at the time, and there was about 200,000 people killed. There was 1 million people homeless at displaced by the earthquake. I saw at the time I had my own IT company, and what I've been doing for a good few years, we were doing a lot of outdoor voice and data communication, like wireless networks, like Wi-Fi, but long distance Wi-Fi. And I've been doing it for a good few years, and going even further back than 2010, in 2004, there was a big tsunami in Southeast Asia. I don't know if you remember that one.
I
Massive
do.
disaster, huge geographical spread, huge infrastructural damage, but also a lot of people killed and also. My father is originally from Indonesia, so I had an interest for the area. Anyway, so I was following what happened there, and I kind of got this little seed in the back of my head going, the stuff that you're doing in your business day to day, those kind of networks would be really useful in that kind of scenario because what happens there, you get like a natural disaster, like a tsunami, an earthquake, a tornado, a forest fire. You get significant infrastructural damage. Quite often, the local first responders have no means to communicate, but also the actual responding organizations on an international scale, like the large NGOs, they have their own little silo that they communicate in. They're like their radio network. But there's no cross organizational communication and there's no cross organizational coordination. So you get a huge waste of resources and manpower because of that. And I had kind of this idea if I could go into that area and build a large communication network on a fairly ad hoc basis, which we could do, it would be useful. But as any entrepreneur has their own company, your first priority is your business. I had a young family, so I didn't do anything with that for a good few years until I saw the news coming out of Haiti, and I kind of had the decision, well, you know what, maybe I should get up off my ass and go over and see if I can help. And that's how I ended up doing what I do now.
Okay, so tell me about the technology. How do
Yeah,
you how do you create a technology that allows many different agencies that all have their own incompatible
yeah.
equipment to communicate with each other?
Well, we look for the common denominator. What is everybody using to communicate? And that's like not only the first responders, but also the people on the ground, because we very much wanted to also offer communication means to the affected people. And then, and now still, Wi-Fi is ubiquitous. Everybody uses Wi-Fi on their phones, on their tablets, on their laptops, on their computer network. So we looked at, let this be the end point of the network that we create. Wi-Fi, so everybody, you don't really, and you don't have any compatibility issues. Obviously, you can build a massive Wi-Fi network anywhere in the world, but that needs to be connected to the internet actually. So we looked at that, and the most obvious solution was using VSAT terminals. Like Viasat. It's kind of the predecessor. Everybody talks about Starlink now with Elon Musk. Now there was kind of ad hoc mobile satellite solutions long before that. You had Q-band, K-band satellite terminals. The unfortunate thing at those times was that they were horribly expensive to use, and the bandwidth wasn't great. But a little bit of bandwidth is better than none, so that's kind of the approach we took. So at that time, I got a bunch of friends together and people I work with. I said, listen, guys, how about we go over to Haiti and we see what we can do? It's a terrible situation. Let's contribute in some way, in a way that technology that we're familiar with, and go see what we can do. So then obviously we needed, beside manpower, we needed equipment.
Right.
And large disaster, like where am I going? Because I wasn't doing any humanitarian aid work and nothing of this scale. I thought, okay, where am I going to get the equipment? So I started calling around to the suppliers, the manufacturers I was working with at the time, and the response in general was, yeah, it's a great idea that you're doing this. Here's 2 Wi-Fi access points. And my inner voice was saying, really appreciate 2 Wi-Fi access points, but I'm not going to get anywhere with that. Until a point where I contacted a company based in California called Aruba Networks. When I spoke to their sales rep, and he just said, listen, have a look at our website. Just send me a list of the equipment that you need. So I had a look, made my ultimate Christmas wish list, and sent it back to him with an email going, I know you can't send me all of this because it's a huge list, but no, this is, if you can send me some of this is, I will be very useful. Didn't hear back from them for a few days until late at night. I mean, because of time difference, I think it was about midnight. This email pinged into my inbox, and it was a shipping notice. Like they literally shipped me a whole 60-foot container full of Wi-Fi equipment, very high
Wow.
end, worth like retail value about $250,000, and they just went, "Here you go, off you go." And at
Wow.
that point, I
Who
went,
did that for you?
Aruba Networks. So that
Amazing.
would, yeah, and then of course I had to, I was at the point where, yeah, I really need to get my stuff together because all this equipment is winging its way to, whether for a staging base in Florida, and that's where it was sent. So I had to very quickly book everybody of the team on a flight. We flew to Florida, of course, unpacked the equipment at the staging area, configured it, tested it, repacked it again, had to arrange shipping to Haiti, which was a challenge because geographically it's relatively close, but the UN was bumping everybody off their of any transport going into Haiti because they wanted priority. So our shipment ended up being bumped off a boat twice at the port, but eventually it got there. And what we just did, once it arrived in Haiti, we went over there with the team. I had arranged, local security, had people who helped us there. We had vehicles. So we just loaded up a pickup truck with pre-configured equipment and started driving around because at this point we had no experience in this area. We knew this is what we want to offer. We know this is going to help the people like the responders, but we don't know what these organizations are. We don't know where they are. So we started driving around, and the moment we'd say a field hospital or a displaced person camp or a homeless camp, we would stop. We would find out who was running the place, who was in charge, and we go, okay, do you need improved communications? Because we can help you. We can do that. And 9 out of 10 times the response was, yes, please. Whatever you can do, do it. So we started doing our magic. And to give you a practical example, at one point we found a field hospital that was run by a team of doctors from the University of Miami hospital. They had sent a team there. They're all working in tents, like literally everything was intense. The operating theaters, the wards were intense. They had an IT room in a tent. They had a morgue in a tent, that whole thing. But they had very little communication. They had one of these satellite links up that was very slow. And what we had noticed earlier that day, we had been at the other, this was at one side of the airport in Port-au-Prince, which actually at the moment is a complete disaster area, but for different reasons. But we had been at the UN compound at the other side of the airport earlier that day, and we noticed they had several very fast satellite uplinks there that were underused. So we just approached the doctors in charge and said, listen, we can put a wireless link from your area. There's a shed over there, a barn. We can put an antenna up there. And we can shoot a link right across the airport to the UN compound. We hook you up, and you will have super fast internet access by the end of the day. And they were delighted because one of the things they wanted to do is use telemedicine. Like they would
Yeah.
get people in there with all kinds of diseases, injuries, and they might not have the specialist knowledge there, but if they had a stable, fast internet connection, they could basically do a video call with a doctor or a surgeon in their main hospital in Miami or elsewhere in the US or elsewhere in the world for that matter. So we put that internet connection up. They had it up and running in the same day. And that enabled them just to basically improve the quality of service. So that made a difference. In other locations, we saw that small hospitals that we set up, because they were able to communicate, they were able to share resources. Like I remember one hospital had a large shipment. They had received a large shipment of antibiotics, more than they actually needed. There was another hospital, a temporary hospital a couple of miles away, who were desperately short of antibiotics, but because they suddenly had this means of communication that we had provided, they could get in touch with each other and say, okay, listen, guys, can we come and pick up, a truckload of antibiotics? And it's as simple as that, really. It's providing the communication that we see as common in our society at the moment, and then enable in those kind of environments, it could literally make a difference of life or death.
Yeah, must be incredibly satisfying to be able to come
Well,
in
that's the
and
thing, yeah,
provide
because I
that.
mean, I went there with the thought that, let's do this for about a few months as my contribution to humanitarian aid work, and then I go back and do run my company again, and that never happened. Like we ended up working in Haiti for nearly 2 years at one point, and then it just grew from there. And I've been doing this full time, pretty much since then.
So how is the operation funded?
It's a non-profit, so we depend on donations from different kind of levels. We get some private donations to like for crowdfunding campaigns that we run. We get corporate donations. We get charitable foundations donate. We get from different sources that we get our funding. It's a constant struggle. It's the part of my job that I hate the most, but I need to do it. I hate to do it, knocking on people's door and basically going, "Can you give them a bit of money?" It's important. It makes a difference. It has to be done. But that's one of the reasons we're actually going through large organizational restructuring at the moment, where I'm getting, I'm getting people pulled in now, a full board really, with people with fundraising experience, people with corporate background. Not so much the core disaster response, but that helps me take those kind of tasks off my hand, so I can focus more on the operational work.
I see. And are
Yeah.
there scenarios where the UN or whoever the primary disaster management
Mm.
organization is would simply hire you to provide that as one of the services that they're bringing in?
Yes and no. They wouldn't as much hire as in pay us to do that, but 9 out of 10 times they come asking us for it. Like, to give you a great example, back in 2015, when in Europe we had the large, what we call the Syrian refugee crisis. There were all the Syrians coming into Europe. The main entry point were the Greek islands. They were being smuggled across from Turkey by human smugglers, basically, and dumped on the shores of these islands. And we saw this because we monitor all the kinds of stuff that's going on globally, different kinds of crises on a continuous basis. We saw this picking up really early on, so we sent a small team down to the Greek island of Lesbos. And what we thought is, what, on this area, on the landing beaches where these people arrive, we'll put up a Wi-Fi hotspot or Wi-Fi hot zone, to call it like that. So we offer communication both for the arriving refugees, but also for the other responding organizations. And we had that up and running pretty quickly. And we're doing it after a few days of running that, and you notice that all these refugees arriving, they might not have anything, but they all had a smartphone.
But what
Like
about a way
if
to charge it?
Well, that's another thing that we started doing. But yeah, but the thing is, they all had this smartphone. So we're getting off these boats are coming out of the water, and they would have these smartphone wrapped in 20, 30 layers of cellophane just to keep it dry. And they might not have anything else. And the first thing they do, they whip out this phone, power it on, and just basically communicate, but also to find out where they are. Because a lot of them didn't even know what country they were in, and
Wow.
and they didn't know where to get aid. So we did a combination there, like we did Wi-Fi hotspots where we used a captive portal solution that when they connected, they would get the first thing they see is a web page going, okay, you've arrived here. For food, you need to go here. You need to get water there, medical aid there. There's the different facilities, so they could find a way. They could get the aid that they need, and you get people at the time, and we still get that because we work with refugees. People go, "Oh, you're facilitating these illegal immigrants," and I'm not interested in that kind of business. That's not my thing. There's
Right.
people who need help. I'll help them
Yeah,
there. Whatever else happens with them, I'll let the politicians deal with that. But
that's right.
but anyway, we did that, and after a couple of days, this guy came walking up to me and he introduced himself, and he was the field agent in charge for the UN in the area, and he said, "Okay, we're building this refugee camp. Can you guys provide internet and Wi-Fi communication and an IT infrastructure for the refugee camp?" I said, "Yeah, sure, we'll do that. Where is it?" And he said, "Jump in the car and we'll go see it." So he drove a couple of miles outside town, and there was just this large olive orchard. There was nothing there. He says, "This is where we're going to build it." And I go, "Is there electricity?" No, there isn't. Is there any kind of service? No, there isn't. So aside from building a local network that provided communications, we had to get electricity on site. So what we ended up doing is using large solar panels and large storage capacities, power packs to power our equipment. We had to get actual internet access on site. So we found on the nearby city, we got talking to somebody who worked for the local branch, the Greek educational system there, who had a campus for the university there. They had fiber. So we said, can we tap into your fiber? So we built across 15 miles, we built a microwave link to where the camp was. So that brought internet access on site. We solved the power problem by using solar power. And then we had to build the physical network structure. So we did that for the first camp. And then they wanted to build another one. And said, can you do that? Yes, of course. So in the end, at one point, we had networks in 18 refugee camps across Greece. And the maximum amount of users that we had on were 400,000 users at one point. So it
Wow.
was a significant undertaking. And that was all because the UN asked us to do that. Did they pay us for it? No. Did they offer? No. What they did do is take pictures and show to their donors and go, look at the great stuff we're doing. Give us money so we can do more of this kind of stuff. At which point I had a not so friendly chat with the UN guy in charge and listen, we'll do this. We don't need money for it. We'll take care. But don't go asking donors for money on the back of the work that we're doing. So, yeah. And the same, but I mean, that's the UN. But like,
Yeah.
especially now that we're doing this for 14 years and we've been in so many countries and locations, especially that like Southeast Asia, that get hit by multiple disasters every year. And by now, the responder organizations at local level, but also national level, know us. So quite often we would get a call and say, listen, okay, we know that you like to go, we had a hurricane here or a typhoon, can you come and help? And we'd already seen that it happened. So we go, yeah, sure. We'll get a team out there and we'll come out and help.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
What about application of your technology in wildfire areas where there's nobody there but billions of trees,
Hmm.
and then all of a sudden there's a huge wildfire, and now there's
Yeah.
lots of people coming in, firefighters and
Uh-huh.
disaster aid and
Yeah.
all that stuff, and there's no telecommunications
Hmm.
infrastructure. How
Yeah.
do you drop that into place?
Well, I mean, first I'm going to say we actually have not worked in a wildfire situation ourselves yet, but we are very, like, it's a similar scenario where you're looking at the remote area with no infrastructure. Plus, we know what organizations, there's a really good organization in the US already called ITDRC, do similar kind of stuff like us. There's a certain overlap. They've worked in wildfire, so we kind of see also how they've doing it. But you're looking at the kind of similar setup with what I just described, for instance, in Greece with a refugee camp, basically a greenfield site. There's a remote location, no services whatsoever. You had to get equipment in there. So what you need power and you need actual internet access. Power, you can use, we switched a good few years ago, we switched from using fossil fuel diesel generators because, yeah, they work great, but eventually you end up running out of diesel. So we actually switched to renewables, not so much out of a green perspective. I mean, that's a nice side effect of it. But because if we use renewable like solar and small portable wind turbines, we can actually continue without ending, we can power our equipment. It's just a simple calculation. We need X amount of power, then means we need so many solar panels, and then the sun there, your storage capacity. So that solves the power solution. Then actually getting internet on the side, that became a whole lot easier a few years ago when Mr. Elon Musk started his Starlink company, where these, very easy to use portable satellite terminals allow you to get fast internet access in most of the globe. Let's put it that way. Doesn't cover all of it. Plus, the big advantage of their services, it's relatively cheap. Like beforehand with the traditional satellite communications, you pay $1,000, $2,000 a month for like a 2 or 3 megabits a second connectivity. We use Starlinks now that are powered up in 5 minutes time that provide 100 and 150 megs connectivity, and they cost us less than $100 a month. So that makes it a whole lot easier to use. And that's how we potentially in a wildfire situation. That's, obviously like that's the standard power, internet, and local network. It also depends, of course, what the users need. You know, if you're talking about a fire brigade with different teams, different kinds of connectivity, security has become a big issue. Network security and hardening the network. So we can all do that. Like all our people that we work are all IT specialists in different kind of areas. So we can pretty much once we got a network up and running, we can provide a tailored service to whatever people need and whatever the organizations that we provide connectivity for require.
I see. So refugees could show up. They can pull out their device. If they've got some charge left on it, they can get logged in.
Yeah.
Right away, they can search what are the good
hmm
restaurants in this area.
Well,
Yeah.
it's not mostly, but for priority. But I mean, basically anybody. Like I mentioned, refugees there, but like, there's firefighters. We're also
Yeah.
talking about other responding organizations like Red Cross, etc. Give we've been, like I said, in Ukraine for the last 2 years, and what happened there a lot is that communication, especially in a wartime situation, is key. Also for the civilian population to provide aid. Um, yeah, and we're going in now in about a week or so to an area which actually in the west of Ukraine, which is it's actually as far from the front line as you can get, but there's a large influx of IDPs there, internally displaced persons, basically refugees, Ukrainian people who'd fled from the actual front line and temporarily have to live in a different part of the country. They need housing, they need food, they need water, they need medical care, they need schooling because a lot of them have their kids with them.
Right.
What's happening and that all has to be coordinated. There's different people and groups, and we're working with in Ukraine a lot with faith groups from different churches. That all has to be coordinated. They need to know what's happening. They need to, put requests out. We need medical aid. We need food. We need whatever. And in Ukraine, for instance, like the Russians are bombing the physical infrastructure a lot, so that would knock out communications regularly. But what's also happening is that they're doing large-scale cyber attacks, which would basically put the whole national communication network in Ukraine out of order for like a week, 2 weeks at a time. So what we're doing in those kind of locations, we're putting a satellite terminal in that provides basically an internet uplink from that area. We're building out local networks, and that could be on different areas, like with where we put wireless links in. It could be what we call a hub and spoke model, like where the satellite would be the hub, and then we put from there, because of that we have a large amount of bandwidth, we put out wireless links to locations that might be 5 or 10 miles away to provide connectivity in there. And then, of course, we need to do the whole power magic with solar and wind power, so it all keeps up and running. And in combination, we do, add-on things. We provide a bit of power lighting systems too, like that hooked into these solar power units or the power storage capacity. But what we do, because the equipment is completely independent from the existing internet or the communications network in Ukraine, all these locations where we have this system set up, the whole communications network in Ukraine can go down. Our stuff will keep up and running. And that gives such an advantage where aid can be requested, there can be communication, but also the really simple things like the social aspect of it. People who fled from like near the front line and are now living in a different part of the country or even outside, they can actually get in touch with their friends and family and actually let them know, I'm okay, I'm here. And, you keep that social aspect because when people are basically chased away from their homes by a war, by a natural disaster or any kind of crisis, it has a huge mental impact. And, actually facilitating these people to stay in touch with their friends and family, but also with the world at large, to feel a bit more connected, has a huge positive effect on their mental well-being also, which is also something, it's not visual, but you need to consider it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So you've created a system that's relatively invulnerable to outside attacks, unless someone wants to go shoot down Elon's satellites.
Well, yeah, pretty much. Like in these kind of situations, what does happen, unfortunately, is in the Ukraine, because it's one of the few war zones that we operated on. The physical parameter of the actual dish for the Starlink system is it's actually not a dish. Everybody calls it a dish, but it's actually a rectangular antenna. That actually has been programmed into the Russian drones, the reconnaissance drones that they send up. And what we found out pretty much soon after we started deploying these units relatively near to the front line, is that if a drone would spot the physical signature of one of those antennas, they would call an artillery strike on that area to destroy the communication system. So we had to look with the Ukraine and go, okay, how are we going to prevent that? And the easiest thing to prevent it is not put these units in place, but you can't do that because the people need communication. So we started to look at different ways to camouflage them, and because of the radio signal, you can't just put everything over those antenna, because if it actually deteriorates the signal, it negatively affects the communication. So what we found out, funny enough, and initially I didn't want to bring it out when we started doing this, but now it's such a common thing. You know those big bags that onions come in, the kind of net
Yeah.
material?
Yep.
Yeah. If you pull one of those big bags off the antenna, it doesn't distort the signal, but
Right.
the physical signature of the antenna is no longer recognizable to the drones. So that's what we're using in Ukraine now on most of the occasions.
But then all of the internet communications smell like onion.
Well, yeah, there's enough smelly stuff on the internet anyway, so yeah.
So, but you could also use that to put up dummy antennas as a
Yeah,
way to have the Russians waste their ammo
you
shooting a
could.
bunch of cardboard boxes or
You could if you want to go, and I presume that there's a good chance that that's happening. I would say some of the Ukrainian military who are using the same product for the communication might just be doing that, actually, and then triangulate where the artillery strike is coming from and do counter artillery barrage. But that's all a different area.
right. No,
Yeah,
and I know you're focused on the disaster
yeah.
response and taking care of the people who are
Hmm.
injured rather than getting involved in the politics or
Well, you kind of have
the
to, because
tactics of war. But
yeah.
yeah, it's hard to
I mean,
separate them.
it is, but I mean, it's a thin line you have to walk, because I mean, obviously, you don't want to be seen as too supportive of one side or the other. As you know, if we get actively involved in supporting the Ukraine military, maybe 2 years down the line there might be some natural disaster in a part of Russia that people are suffering, and I'm not talking about the government or the military, but people suffer. And if we want to go in, they might go, "Oh no, you guys supported Ukraine in the war. We're not letting you in." So we're really, really walking a very thin line, and just do not want to become involved as an organization. And I can't do that as a CEO representing the organization. I can't make political judgment calls and these kind of things. We're
I think
there to
that's a
help
really
people.
good point that you bring up, though,
Yeah,
about the people suffering, because and I imagine this is the case everywhere, right? It's
yeah,
people don't have a problem with people,
no,
you know,
exactly. And you see,
governments and specific power hungry leaders, which could use the term generously, um,
yeah,
are the
but
ones
that's
who
it.
start that. I think all
Yeah,
around the world, people just want to be, take care of their family and get on with their lives. And I don't think anyone at the troop level, really has any interest in being at war,
no, and you see the
rather than
same in
just,
Ukraine. Like, I mean, we
yeah,
see going a bit into that area, but the most of the guys fighting Ukraine on the Ukrainian side are conscripts. Same on the Russian side. Those Russians, most of
right,
them don't want to be there. So, because I was asked the question, so we did, besides the technical work, we did some medical assistance in Ukraine too. And obviously, then you get the question, would you help the Russians? And I go, I would not help the Russians, but I would help an injured Russian person if I found him. I would not leave him there because he's Russian.
right.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to be there anymore than,
He doesn't want to be there. He's a person in need of aid, and that's what I'm
yeah,
there, and that's where we're an organization there. But I mean, also as a large respect, like a lot of most of the people that we work with for our organization are volunteers, and it's just amazing that the amount of people over the 14 years that I've worked with because I'm doing this, people who are really skilled in their profession, who have a lot of experience and are willing to give up their time and put the physical benefits or the physical well-being aside and go out anywhere in the world to help people, and actually take, we got some really good people who just literally take up their paid holidays that they have, the few, and like in Europe we get a lot more paid holidays where you have a job than in the US. So, but we get a lot of volunteers from the US who go, okay, I'll take 2 weeks paid holiday and I come and help. And these people are just literally out of the good of their heart, are willing to travel all the way across the world and help people, and that's just fantastic, I think, and that's one of the The great benefits that I get out of this job. Like, I mean, I help people, but I also get to meet really great people also.
Right. And so you're working with essentially clients, who are at their worst,
Hmm.
right? They've just suffered a massive disaster,
Yeah.
and coming to their aid are people who are at their best. So
Yes,
you're really
exactly.
getting to see such a spectrum of humanity.
Yeah. And it's always like, I mean, I always say to people that go, "Oh, you must see a lot of the world." I go, "Yeah, I travel a lot and I see the best places and I meet the best people on the planet under the worst circumstances." That's kind of the way I put it always. So,
Very interesting.
yeah.
So yeah, I hadn't thought about you as a travel agency for people who want to do
Well,
humanitarian travel work.
yeah, yeah. Well, you get a lot though, and yeah, like I said, it's great. And then also on the ground, like you meet in disaster areas people themselves are themselves affected by the disaster, but actually still step up to help the others who are slightly worse off than them and who will actually willing to better themselves and better their community, which is really great.
And how do you take care of your team if you're going into an area where there's no food, there's no sanitation?
Yeah.
How do you go in there equipped to be able to keep your team intact?
Well, it involves a lot of logistical planning in the background. Like, I mean, the way the structure is, if we become aware of a situation, either through the monitoring that we do ourselves or by being asked by another, a government or another entity or another organization anywhere in the world to deploy, the first thing you do, we obviously do a lot of research on, what is the situation there, but the first actual physical step we take, we send in what we call an advanced team, which is normally 2 to 4 people. It's fairly self-sufficient, which means they carry their own equipment, but they also, they might have food. They might have, like, quite often we use like military rations, like MRE and that kind of stuff. They go in on to do a damage and need assessment, which is basically fact-finding mission. They will go into the area. They will see, okay, what happened, where did it happen, and what is needed. So, and they also make the first contacts on the ground, with the local organizations. They will talk to local first responders, they will talk to local government, they will talk to other outside organizations already there, but they also will very much talk to the people on the ground. And they also fill a kind of a quartermaster role. They find out, if a team is coming over, what kind of lodgings, what kind of, accommodations do we need, what kind of transport can we arrange. They will arrange food, and they will find out, if we have to go for a longer period, where can we get our food locally, which we prefer, because it's easier from a logistic perspective, but it puts us in a position where we could put money back in the local community. So rather than us
Right.
bringing food in from abroad, which is costs a lot of money, that we rather spend that money on the ground. So in the long run, the economy also benefits. So but there's a lot of juggling involved, and that first team would also then report back to us, to the head office, and go, okay, this is what the situation is. This is the help that we can offer. And based on that, we can see, okay, do we need to send a follow-up team? Because sometimes, the local first responders are so quick and so effective that we are actually not needed. On the other hand, if we actually find out that we are needed, then yes, what kind of team, what kind of skills do we need, what equipment do they bring, and what kind of duration of the mission do we foresee? And then based on that, we start planning the travel arrangements, we start logistics, food, equipment in place, and all that kind of stuff. So, but we try to operate as independent as possible. So, that's, for instance, like I mentioned earlier, that we started doing some medical stuff. That actually rolled out of our first deployment to the Philippines in, I think it was 2014, where we wanted to send a team in, but we wanted to make sure that the team, if needed, could get some medical care, if anybody became injured, and we didn't want to put an additional strain on the medical services there. So I put a call out to my network and said, is there anybody who's skilled, like, in medical trauma care, who is willing to travel along with my team to look after the medical needs? And I got a huge response out of that. Like, I got literally nearly 100 people volunteering with very good skills. So I thought, maybe occasionally we need to actually bring a few medical people along who could then, when our team goes into a small area or small village or remote area to build this comms network, let's bring a few nurses or doctors along who can actually provide some medical care for the local people too. So we're doing that on an on and off basis, but that's very much a side thing. I mean, our core mission is communications, and that's what we're actually, continue to do and continue to focus on.
That's interesting though, because you never know when your side mission becomes your core mission.
Well, we were in danger of
Yeah.
that. Like up till about a year ago, we were doing more and more medical stuff, and and this is it's a bit contradictory. Also, fundraising for work that you do. If you go, yeah, we put these magic airwaves in the air, and people can talk to each other. That doesn't paint a very, promotional picture, let's put it that way. But when you go, oh, we help sick people and we give them medicine, people are much more willing, people and companies, to actually donate towards something like that. And it's
Yeah.
really, we were going, we need funding to continue to operate, and this kind of activity brings in more funding. But we were at one point we were at a risk of diverging too much in the area of doing more and more medical stuff and maybe a bit less communications. And I had to look at it, because it's a company that we run. It's a non-profit, but we have to look. You can't do everything well. So we had to look. Okay, maybe we should just focus. So we've been kind of narrowing a bit more on the communication, because that's our niche. That's just what we do really well, and that's what we're known for. And yeah, then if we have a medical person along for the team and who can maybe help somebody else on the ground, fine. On
Right.
an occasional basis, but we're not expanding into that area any further.
Okay.
Yeah.
So about the comms side, when
Hmm.
when you go into an area where there's been a disaster, it might not be the case, I imagine, that you are replacing an internal Wi-Fi internet situation that was perfect before you got there. Now it's damaged and now you're putting up something.
Yeah.
Like you might be putting up the best comms that area has ever had, or
Yep.
the only comms
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
area has ever had. And I would imagine, you know, they don't want you to take it away when you go, right? Because this is like now they
Yeah.
finally have tasted Wi-Fi and it
Exactly.
served
And
for the
that's what.
disaster, but now they
Yeah.
want to keep it. So do you leave the systems in place?
Yes, we do actually. Like, I mean, in the first few years, that was a difficult thing to do, because we needed the equipment for other occasions, but we got such a good relationship. Like, and I mentioned Aruba Networks earlier at the beginning, and I'm still hugely thankful to Aruba because they are what we got started. We eventually switched over to different manufacturer for technical reasons and logistical reasons. Cambium Networks, who's been our main Wi-Fi equipment supporter or donor since for so many years. But which allowed us, because their equipment was smaller and especially less expensive, which put us in a position where we could actually leave equipment in place. And a good example of what you just suggested is when we went to the Philippines that time, there was a large typhoon that swept over a large part of the island, and we at that point were going, okay, we're sending a team in, where are we going to go? And there was the island of Tacloban, the city of Tacloban on one of the islands that was really the worst hit. But everybody was going to Tacloban, and I was going, is everybody's going there? The typhoon had a path across the other islands. Nobody seems to go to the other island, so we actually went to the next island over, which was also very severely hit. And through some contacts and some planning beforehand, we ended up in an area north of the island Cebu, and we got talking to a guy, a Filipino American pastor, Salvador, who works out of Oklahoma but spends about 10 months a year in the Philippines doing fantastic work, helping really disadvantaged rural communities. And he was working in this small village, and village is a large word, like this is going bamboo, you're talking of bamboo huts
Right.
called Arapal. And what he had been doing for years is basically help these people out of poverty. He was teaching them to, agriculture. He was teaching, he had set up a small orphanage, you name it. He was doing magic work there. But he also, because he was out of Oklahoma, he had a lot of contacts in the US. That's why how somebody I knew, one of my contacts, had talked to this guy. So we actually ended up working in this, like I said, bamboo hut village in the middle of the jungle in the Philippines. And but because we saw there was such a potential, it was actually serving such a large, wider area, a radius of 20 miles. All the people were coming there for help. We set up a huge, and this was old style, big 15-foot across satellite dish that we shipped from Saudi Arabia there. We built this, we set it in the middle of the jungle on a hill. And these Filipinos are great. They go, okay, what can we do? We go, well, we have to, put it structurally in a piece of concrete in the ground. And they just got hand chiseled, and they chopped out a hole that was like 4 by 4 feet and 4 feet deep into the rock, poured concrete into it. We put the satellite dish in there. And then we built out from that satellite dish. We did the same hub and spoke model. We built the different houses and, well, not even houses, different huts. We built out Wi-Fi links. We put IP telephones. You know what IP telephones are? Yeah.
Yes.
We put an IP telephone in every hut. So there was these people living there. In these huts, they could literally pick up the phone and call anywhere in the world because of that connection. And what also did is it was very much a people in the Philippines are very Catholic, very religious, and in this village they had the local church for a wider area, and they used to do baptisms every Sunday at Sunday Mass, and it's amazing. I saw people arriving there on Sunday at 9 o'clock in the morning who had to just walk 10 miles or to go get baptized there. But because to this connection with the US to Salvador, they were getting funding support for his work there from US donors. So by providing this connectivity, they were actually broadcasting Sunday Mass via Skype back to the US. So people had provided funding for him to do programs to help these people out of poverty. He could show them what the effect their work was having by having this live uplink that he could use. And but beside that, I mean, that's really nice to do. But they also could, connect, do email and Skype calls with. Skype was still popular there. Now everybody's using Zoom and Teams, but Skype was the thing. They could, like the people in the village, the local doctor, which wasn't even a doctor, like this was basically the guy who knew to put a bandage on somebody, so he was promoted to doctor. He could then, when there was a serious injury, he could actually connect with a nearby hospital or doctor in the nearby city, which was 25 miles away, to see what he could do. Because they had no telephones either. Like they had no electricity. Right. There was a diesel generator, so we put solar panels up, all that kind of stuff. And of course, once we'd done that, we left all the stuff in place, and we trained one of the young kids there, actually a bunch of kids, on how to maintain the equipment. So if they had any issues, they could do their own first line support. But we're still in ongoing contact with them, and we're actually going back in hopefully late after the summer to upgrade the whole network that's there.
You know, when we started our conversation 40 minutes ago, that we were joking about how big the world is.
Yeah.
And when you talk about now, putting IP phones in people's huts and people being able to transmit back to loved ones and share the baptism and teaching these kids IT skills, you really do get a sense that what you're doing is making the world smaller.
It is, and I hope in this case, in a good way.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, that's right. Well, Evert, that's absolutely fascinating what you're working on, and I really, really appreciate you taking a moment out of your day to share that with us. If folks want to get in touch with you, whether they want to, need you for a disaster, or whether they'd like to have you help them replicate a similar program, what's the best way to reach you?
Well, I mean, there's the website, disastertechlab.org. That's the same thing. But we're also on Facebook. Facebook, if you want to see some of the work that we've done in the past, Facebook's got tons of pictures and posts and videos. We're on Twitter. We're on any of the socials except TikTok. We're not on TikTok yet because I can't dance. So, but but I mean, people do get in touch because I mean, I'm talking here about the work we're doing, but there's so many people behind me and that we worked with throughout the year. So anybody like who's interested in what we're doing, just find out more. We're also looking, because one of the things we're doing, we always want to develop new technologies for use in this environment. So anybody wants to work on that. People who want to volunteer, people who who want to see on a once-off basis how they can support us, look us up. We're all over the internet. So
I will. Yeah. I will share that. Yeah. And I know there's a lot of people in our audience who'd be very interested in working with you or contributing to the work that you're doing.
So, yeah, and even for chat, get in contact. I love talking about the work because get the word out there, and maybe people might not work with us if they work with somebody else, but if it motivates them to reach out and help somebody in need, that makes me happy.
Help is help. That's right.
Exactly.
Great. Evert, thanks so much for joining me today. Our guest is Everet Bopp, who is the CEO of Disaster Tech, providing connectivity in the places where it's needed and when it's needed most. So thank you so much for that. And thank you all for joining me and listening today. You've been listening to The Fire Break. I'm Steve Wolf. We're sponsored by Team Wildfire. Take care, and we'll see you at the next one.